Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. We've got another news segment to share with you. Mental health and wellness is something we discuss frequently, but it's a topic that requires holistic and robust conversation to reflect its importance. And that's why we're very fortunate to be joined by Shane Baker for his perspective on the issue. Shane is a mental health advocate, and he joins us from Victoria, British Columbia. Hey, Shane, good morning. Thank you for waking up bright and early for us.
Good morning, Dave, and good morning, everybody out there. I hope you're all doing well.
We are doing well, especially well that we're talking to you. Now, Shane, part of your perspective on wellness comes from your personal experience and your own journey. If you can you take us back to a time when you acquired a disability and how that impacted your emotional well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been raised in Victoria. I'm Gitxsan, which is a First Nation in between Hazelton and Kitwanga in British Columbia. But I've lived in Victoria since I was about 7. When I was about 25, I had been in an accident where I fell from approximately 16 feet and I sustained a very serious traumatic brain injury. This traumatic brain injury resulted in me losing my vision and a lot of my mobility in the beginning. Prior to the accident, I had been playing rugby at the men's level here in Victoria. I've been a graphic designer. So I think that me getting through things has given me an opportunity to kind of see all sides of the coin, so to speak. Once I got my disability, I was really put back to a time of my life where I wasn't independent anymore. My cooking skills slacked. My ability to get to the grocery store was not great. I'd lived my life as a sighted person my whole life, and all of a sudden, overnight, I was legally blind, and I did not know how to be a blind person. And so my health really suffered after that, not just from the traumatic events of the accident, but when you start to deal with a traumatic event, it's very difficult to manage what you're going through at the time. And at the same time, the doctors are trying to figure out what sort of symptoms they should be treating you with or treating, and what kind of medications you should be on. And so I became really I would find solutions for my health in pharmaceuticals. So if I felt sad, I would take antidepressants. If I felt anxious, I would take medications that they gave me for anxiety. If I hurt, I would take a painkiller. Like that. That was really where I ended up.
So what you're describing there almost feels like that loss of control. When the independence goes away, we lose some control. So what were some of the small steps that you started to take to maybe reverse that course?
Yeah, and a lot of my recovery in the beginning, because I sustained such a traumatic brain injury, we had to start and work on my motor skills. So I remember early on, I was at a rehabilitation hospital, and we were doing simple leg and hand raises, and so having to deal with that all of a sudden was tremendously difficult, and I got very isolated to the point where my family members, my parents actually would have to go out and get groceries for me because I wasn't able to go out and do those things on myself. And I kind of remembered one day after sitting in my house, like at my apartment, like I had done for years, and I remember that's it. I'm going to take things back. And that day I went out my apartment and I walked to the end of the driveway. And that's all I got. That's as far as I got that day.
Mm.
The next day, I tried it again. And this time I got down to the end of the corner where the bus stop was. The next day, I got even farther, and I ended up going on to a trail network here in Victoria, and it was called the Galloping Goose, and it's still one of my most favorite places to walk because it's an area where sighted people give you information that is useful for you as a visually impaired person. If they're coming behind you, they will ring their bell and say, "Coming on your left." and that doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah, we just think about the simplest vocal cues, right? Give us a little bit of help when we know where you're coming from so we're not guessing along the way. So, Shane, this is where you started adding a couple more building blocks piece by piece and trying new things. What were some of the alternative and holistic methods that you incorporated into your journey?
Well, when it really started with that walk out the door, and soon I was at the recreation center. It's hard to say, but I was walking in the water. I had reached a weight that was really unhealthy, and so on top of going to the recreation center and beginning some physical exercise, I had also started reaching out to local agencies. The Victoria Native Friendship Center was a huge support of mine. They were really working on getting me engaged with the community resources that were available. And I started seeking out different types of treatment, like acupuncture. I suffer from chronic pain as a result of my injuries, and so I started looking at, let's say, more holistic ways of looking at my health. So I started receiving acupuncture. I started to there's a local school here in Victoria called the Pacific Rim. And basically, they do a lot of stuff on herbal medicines and Western Chinese medicine. And I just started trying some of these things, and I started to notice a really huge improvement. I started to lose weight. My depression symptoms started to ease. I started to develop tools to learn how to deal with the anxiety and depression that I was facing, because I wasn't finding solutions in those antidepressants, in those Ativans, in those, and all of a sudden I started finding peace and happiness and joy, walking around the park, writing in a journal, really engaging with my community. So I think for me, that was a time in my life when I started to look at my health as a little bit different and a little bit more holistically in range to my whole world.
Mm. You mentioned some of the time you spent at the recreation center, and I've for a long time been a believer in the connection between exercise and well-being. What do you believe the benefits are, and what are some of the activities that you like to do?
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a piece that I kind of forgot to highlight is that the sauna and the steam room
Oh, oh,
became my present. Let's say if I could go to the rec center and get on that cardio and treadmill and do 15 minutes, and then do 20 minutes of strength training, and then my reward was to go sit in the sauna for 10, 15 minutes and go sit in the steam room for 15, 20 minutes. And it's hard to explain how, the benefits of a thing like a steam room, but I kind of called it my urban sweat. And to be fair, living as an Indigenous person in urban center, we actually don't always have access to those kinds of things. And Indigenous people have been using sweats for a long time. Some of the elders and old ones that I know have actually been able to treat things like diabetes, rare forms of diabetes, arthritis. I'm sure there's a ton of scientific evidence out there for the benefits of stuff like that.
When it comes to something like the sauna or the steam room, I also am a believer in the benefit there. And I do have a couple theories. One of them is just that it's a place where we take away some of the stimulations, right? The phone doesn't come
Mm.
in there, the Bluetooth speakers don't come in there, and you can really focus on things like breathing. And then if you go to a really bougie one, then they have like the fancy little dispensers that vaporize all kinds of different like herbs and aromas and things in the place. I just think it's a place where you can really focus on breathing and eliminate a lot of the distraction.
Honestly, and I think you're right. And I've been lucky enough to to re-engage with my culture, and I think a lot of my deeper understandings of health and wellness have come from engaging with my culture and starting to understand things on a little bit more of a deeper level. And so something like the sauna and steam room has just been, it was a real shame when COVID happened. you
Yeah,
know, it,
yeah. Shane, you mentioned that connection that you've maybe been feeling with some more traditional methods of healing. So can you explain a little bit about the practice of the sweat lodge? I mean, I imagine there's some similarities there to the sauna and the steam room, but even things like burning smudge or maybe some of your interactions with other traditional medicine people.
Yeah, absolutely. Early on in my recovery, I spent a lot of time working your sort of traditional routes of medicine. So I saw a counselor, I saw a psychologist, I saw therapists for trauma recovery. I saw, the list goes on and on. And I remember one year I got an opportunity to spend a couple days with an elder, a medicine person. And I came out of that space, after a weekend, and it was like I had gone through the most incredible amount of healing. And so, just getting time with our elders is a place to get guidance. You know, our elders have, some of them have gone through residential schools, some of them have, gone through some really horrible times, and yet they are still willing and able and ready to teach us language, to teach us protocols, to teach us, So when I think of things like smudge, and sweat lodge, I think of getting ourselves back into balance. I think of the idea of Indigenous people having certain times of the year where we practice things. It's getting into the fall and winter time. Some of the nations up where I'm from on the Northwest Coast and even here on the West Coast do cold ceremonial baths. And these types of things, whether we're talking about, ceremonial baths in the ocean or the rivers or the sweat lodges, I really think about getting back to balance, rebirth, growth, healing, letting things go, things like that.
Shane, we've only got about a minute left here, but as I kind of read between the lines in this conversation, when we're thinking about wellness and well-being and mental health, why is it important that we don't just think about sort of mental health as a singular solution, or maybe not even think about working with mental health as a solution at all?
hmm Well, I think that, just from my own experience, you're never going to find that one thing that makes you feel and, incredible. There's never going to be one thing that takes away all your aches and pains or takes away your heart's hurt or, your frustrations with life. And I think that we have now started to shift to a place where we are looking at those different areas or dimensions of our wellness. I'm in school right now, and I took a health course at Camosun College. And one of the things that in the health class was this idea of 7 dimensions of wellness. And so there was, physical, there's environmental, there's spiritual, there's, so I think when we start to really look at all these sort of faces or dimensions of our wellness and we start to address them and developing a plan for ourselves, we'll really experience the benefits, whether that's through better physical health, better relationships with our loved ones, making sure that we're having relationships with our elders, with our children, with, adults our own age, and really taking ourselves outside of looking at our health as a physical sort of, or even physical and mental health, but looking much far beyond that is a great way to grow and really provide you with the things that your whole being needs.
Mm. Shane, I'm so excited that you can be a part of this series with us, be a part of this show. I'm delighted that we had a chance to speak today, and I can't wait to catch up with you again in a couple weeks.
Looking forward to it, Dave. Thank you. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Absolutely. That's Shane Baker, a mental health advocate. He'll be doing a monthly segment with us on well-being, and you can follow Shane on Twitter at Shane S. Baker 77. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen.